Hello, everyone, and welcome. Thank you for joining us for today's live webinar. My name is Marta, and I'll be your facilitator for this session. We're really excited to bring you this conversation today, hosted by Full Fabric in partnership with AWS, to explore what's holding institutions like yours from real digital transformation and what can be done about it. Joining us today are two fantastic speakers, Sean, Senior Account Executive at Full Fabric, and Christopher, Education Account Manager at AWS. After a brief introduction to set the scene, we'll launch a few live polls to hear directly from you. Sean and Chris will react to your answers in real time, bringing your perspectives into the discussion. We'll then wrap up with practical strategies to move forward and a real-world example from London Film School. Feel free to use the chat or Q&A box to drop any questions you may have. Please also note that this session is being recorded. Without further ado, let's get started, and I'll hand over to Sean to kick things off.
Brilliant. Thanks, Marta. And yeah, really excited to be here for this session today. As she mentioned, I'm one of the senior account executives here at Full Fabric, but I've been working in the higher ed tech space for the last 6 years. I think I was counting the other day. I've worked with a few over 100 universities around the world in that space, primarily in the realm of, say, admissions, recruitment, marketing, and operations. But I must say it's been really interesting kind of seeing how far the industry has come with adopting digital transformations since pre-pandemic times, and I'm excited to be able to share some of the insights from Full Fabric and from my own experience on what we've seen work really well in this space. Also, really excited to be joined by Chris from AWS. We'll quickly let Chris introduce himself also.
Yeah, hi Sean, hi Marta, great to see you again, and hello everybody on the call. My name is Christopher Dye. I am an account manager in the AWS higher education team. So I've worked in that team for about 4 years, starting life as a solutions architect, one of the technical people. So delighted to be here and happy to give my thoughts and experiences from a UK perspective. Thanks, Sean.
Nice. And yeah, just before we dive into it, as I was going to say, if you fancy, feel free to just quickly say hi, who you are and where you're calling in from, and with what institution in the webinar chat. Obviously, we've all introduced ourselves, so it'd be good to know who else is here with us. So yeah, without further ado, whether you work in admissions, IT, student services, the chances are you've felt the growing tension between kind of what students expect and how you're being asked to do a lot more with less. In today's session, we're going to try and cut through as many of these buzzwords as possible and talk about what's really holding institutions back. Quickly go on to the next slide here. So yeah, I suppose it's probably best to kind of talk about the elephant in the room, that universities today are under tremendous pressure from all angles, and we're also seeing with students that they're not slowing down. They're expecting consumer grade experiences and often comparing the digital experience they have with you to that they have with the majority of the other digital apps and platforms that they spend their time in. And we know that whilst you're fighting the likes of technical debt, shrinking budgets, or staff burnout, your students, they still want a seamless mobile first and always on journey with personalized communications and visibility. And what we're seeing across the sector is really a growing mismatch between what your students expect and what institutions can realistically deliver with the tools and resources that they currently have. On the left here, I've broken it down into a couple, but what we kind of see, what your students typically take for granted is this instant access to information and updates. They're expecting more personalization, that you offer all of you sort of more in the comms on a day-to-day basis, as well as self-service tools, such that they can easily access things like their schedule. It's not just down to when the institution says they can provide that support or not. Students to expect to be able to get all of that themselves, as well as clarity and confidence from just the first inquiry all the way through to final outcome. Now on the right, I suppose this is more the reality. What we're seeing with the kind of vast majority of institutions today is the fact that they're stuck with the likes of outdated systems. that weren't typically designed to support real-time interactions, often with overstretched teams who are doing, really heroic work, but that's just to keep the basics running. All the while working with tighter budgets, higher stakes, doing more with less isn't just a saying these days. It's, I think, in higher education especially, it's very much the day-to-day reality. And also with the rising pressure on enrollment, retention, especially in the UK and EU, where we're seeing visa changes coming through fairly regularly, such as the latest immigration white paper that was released yesterday, along with shifting demographics and changing learner expectations. They're all hitting really hard. So this gap between, I suppose, what's expected and what's possible, this is the space that we're here to talk about today. So yeah, moving on, I suppose diving into these expectations in a bit more detail. I know this stat tends to get a bit of a reaction, but from the Higher Ed Digital Experience Report, which found that 70% of students said that their university's digital experience should be able to match that of, say, Amazon or Netflix. And let's be honest, this expectation, it hasn't necessarily come from higher education. It's just come from everyone's daily life now. But that really is the bar that they have set in their mind. I was actually recently just chatting with a university in Ireland, and one of the admissions managers told me that students are often actually ghosting them, not replying after they make an application. And one of their hunches as to why that might be the case is often because they're not getting instant updates or responses, or there isn't a feed or like a delivery progress on how they're being processed. Even another one that was speaking to saw that they saw many applicants actually drop off at the point of payment. At the point of payment, they were actually being redirected to a separate payment tool, but many of them felt, in their words, I think, sketchy. But that really is how high the bar is today. And if it doesn't really feel that polished, students do tend to drop off. Finally, with regards to, I suppose, market shifts, I think it is useful here to zoom out for a second and note that whilst we're talking about the IT and digital side of things, this also really does affect every team. So on the marketing side of things, it's no longer just about, say, a shiny logo or a really clever tagline. Today's students really do want to feel your values from the first click all the way through to their first class. On the admissions front, modern admissions teams we're seeing actually behave more like sales teams. They're proactive, they're building really personalized outreach campaigns, and they're nurturing inquiries over time using both data and other insights to refine their strategies as they go through. This forward-thinking approach is driving really predictable, sustainable enrollment growth when done well. On the pricing front, I suppose what used to be mysterious, now these students really do want clarity. They want to know, what are they paying for? When can they pay in installments? And what we're seeing is that when the pricing is fair and understandable, it builds trust, and so does the likelihood of a positive long-term relationship between yourselves and your students. On the finance side of things, it isn't just chasing margins, it's thinking the lifetime value of every student who comes through your institution. I suppose the real win that we're seeing now is turning these students into really strong alumni who will refer you in the future, but also come back for professional learning, repeat learning, adult lifelong learning as they go through. And then finally, I think the cultural shift may be one of the most important of all. Institutions, say, once dictated how education was delivered, but now they recognize the value of an ongoing dialogue between their students, their staff, and their partners. And instead of this being just a one-way street, it's often more of a collaborative process whereby everyone has a voice. It's fostering innovation, deeper connections, and a transformational environment where people really can grow together. So at this point, I'm going to quickly just hand it over to Chris to talk us through some of the things that we're seeing from, I suppose, AWS's point of view. So yeah, Chris, whenever you're ready.
Brilliant. Thank you, Sean. It's great to hear that. And I think it definitely resonates with me in terms of some of the challenges that I see over here in the UK with higher education institutions that I work with. And obviously, it's wrong to generalize, but certainly what I'm seeing is a lot of institutions don't feel equipped for change. There's certainly this change in terms of digital transformation, and that is for various reasons we've uncovered. So one of the big challenges at the moment we are seeing is that budget and funding cuts. That is a major challenge. So we do have a higher education statistics agency in the UK, or HESA, and we've been doing some analysis as a team over here, and we've worked out that the tuition fee income in the UK is around about 27 billion pounds across all HE providers, but total expenditure was about 48.6 billion, and 51% of the expenditure is on staffing costs. So a lot of universities in the UK are working in a deficit in terms of their budget. So it's really hard. It's sort of cutting costs, trying to do more with less, as you've alluded to already, Sean. So that's a real challenge. So obviously less money for more interesting projects and digital adoption. And certainly what I've found in terms of this digital adoption, so adopting new solutions and new software and technologies, it takes higher education, I think, twice as long as a typical public sector organization to implement those changes or technologies. And that's due to the challenges you've mentioned around technical debt, legacy systems, skills, those types of things. So digital adoption is definitely much slower in higher education, which holds the institution back ultimately. And then around student enrollments and retention, obviously the main income stream for a university or a higher education body is the student fees, the student income. And again, back to HESA, we did some analysis and we found that on the scale, in the best case in universities in the UK, a university will retain 100% of their students over a 3-year degree. But at the lower end, the worst case, there is one university that loses 25% of its students through the life of their courses, which is a major issue. If you're losing 25% of your income, you have 25% less budget to do more interesting things. So it's a challenge to retain your students, but also enrolling them is also a challenge. As you said, Sean, having technologies in order to attract new students, making sure your website's up to date, you can personalize the experience from the get-go is a really, really useful way of attracting new students into your organization. And then the major challenge I see, certainly at AWS, with implementing new platforms, new solution is around skills. And it's skills of the IT professionals and the technology professionals learning a new platform, but also skills of the faculty as well. So there was a survey done by Vodafone, which was a foundation study for digital services and digital divide across education in Europe. And it looked at 11 countries. It surveyed 3,000 teachers, and across that board, 42% of those teachers felt they quickly reached their limits when using technology, and then 48% reported increased work stress due to inadequate digital integration and training. So it's a major challenge across the board and something we as a team try to help and address. So in terms of skills, looking at that quote there from Andy Jassy, our CEO at Amazon, there's no compression algorithm for experience. So you have to jump in, you have to get going and get using the new platforms and new technologies to reap the benefits. If you could just move the slide along, Sean, for me. And then in terms of what's getting in the way of better edtech, it looks like, Sean, we've read the same digital experience report, so we can see there the 70% of students compare their university's digital experience with Netflix or Amazon. Which I think they should be. If you have a great experience in your personal life with technology, and then you arrive at university and it's technologies from yesteryear with a lackluster experience, it's not self-service, it's not always on, it doesn't follow you wherever you go, that's going to be disappointing, and that feeds back into that retaining your talent and your students. Also, as part of that survey, they found that 91% of students want their online learning to feel as good as on campus, which is really interesting. How do you replicate that kind of in-house classroom experience remotely? And we have technologies to help with that, and we have some good case studies around that. So there are emerging technologies in that space to assist. And then also at the bottom there, one to remember is 50% of those students surveyed say the quality is a deal breaker when choosing where to study. So if your technology, your experience is subpar, your students are not going to look at you as an institution to join, and also you're going to find it hard to retain them. So they are sizing you up and comparing you as we all do when we're looking at procuring a service or joining a course. And then in terms of those, those blockers, it is technical debt, legacy systems. I see that all the time in IT where we have, a system that was built 10 years ago, nobody really understands, but nobody wants to change or touch it. And that holds the institution back. And we also see, in terms of the skills gap, we also see laggards in terms of people that don't want to change, they don't want to upskill, they don't want to change the way they're doing things, which again holds the institution back. And that's something we need to address and we need to help with. And then back to the point around doing more with less, we're certainly seeing rising license fees in the industry for sort of traditional in-house providers of IT solutions and technology solutions, and also challenges around security. So I spoke to a CIO of a university in London recently who said they received 30,000 DDoS attacks a month. And I read a interesting report from CrowdStrike recently that said 60% of small businesses close within 6 months of a serious cyber attack. And we're seeing that at the moment in the retail industry in the UK. If we just move to the next slide, please, Sean. So ultimately, to address these challenges, it's all around focusing on digital transformation. And I guess, why would an institution want to transform and what are the benefits of digital transformation? So ultimately, it's around modernizing and securing your institution. So creating unique experiences for students that are personalized. It could be as simple as something as, they're logging into your website and then they are a student of a certain department or a certain subject, and they'll get material surfaced based on that particular subject area. So it's personalized for them. We certainly see in terms of digital transformation that you can turn data into wisdom. So I worked with a university in London who had multiple repositories of data, all data about their students, and they brought that all together in a data lake and used analytics and AI over the top of that to spot patterns and trends of when that student was disengaging with their course, perhaps not handing in their homework, not logging into their virtual learning environment. And the university could predict with 90% accuracy if that student was going to drop out of their course. And then obviously, once they've identified those students, they could intervene and signpost certain university services. So making good use of that data and turning it into wisdom is a real benefit of digital transformation. And obviously, if you move to a cloud-based platform, there are sort of inherent benefits. It's inherently faster, it's more agile, it's elastic, and it can scale to grow to meet your requirements. So during the summer months when it's not so busy, we can scale down. And obviously, you only pay for what you use, so your bill will go down. But as and when there's clearing and new students are joining, we can scale up the infrastructure automatically in an automated way to cope with that demand. And then I was reading an IDC report recently that said, cloud computing being adopted globally could prevent more than 1 billion metric tons of CO2 emissions from 2021 through to 2025. So there's a massive benefit in terms of sustainability and moving to cloud-based solutions and edtech solutions such as Full Fabric. And 1 billion metric tons of CO2 is the total CO2 emissions of Germany and the UK combined. So if you have aspirations of goals around cutting carbon and costs, then cloud computing can certainly help you with that. But ultimately, in my view, with regards to solutions like Full Fabric and cloud-based solutions, it's around giving students and staff experiences that they love. So they want to engage with technology. And it's, in my view, it's one of those levers, or one of the few levers you have to pull to, surprise and delight your students and your faculty staff, which will ultimately lead, hopefully, to retaining and obtaining more students in the future. So that's my thoughts and views from the UK, Sean. This session was billed as a fireside chat, so I think we should have a nice chat and a conversation. And I think to promote some of that chat, we've got some polls, some questions that we're going to ask the audience. So you will see a pop-up on the screen for the first question. So let's move over to that. And then the idea is you answer the question in front of you and we'll collate the results. So the first question is around what is the biggest shift you've seen in student expectations over the last 5 years? And you've got 5 different answers there. So this poll gives us an insight into how student needs and expectations are evolving, so how they've changed, as we've alluded to during our presentation. And then it helps us understand these shifts and helps us prioritize and adapt our strategies for student engagement and satisfaction. So it'd be interesting to hear and see what the audience think around question 1. So yeah, we'll just wait a few moments for that to go through.
It's always interesting to see where the group lands on questions like these. I think it's a bit of a mirror moment. But I know from working with lots of different departments, no matter kind of which one they're in, they've all likely felt at least 2 or 3 of these shifts in expectations firsthand. So yeah, a lot to consider there.
Absolutely. Well, I'll definitely be interested to see what the audience state. So yeah, we'll just wait for a few moments to see what the results are of that. So yeah, well, that's gone away now. So okay, so I can see that on the screen now. So it looks like the number one answer, so 37% of you stated that there was a greater demand for personalization, which few, that's kind of what we were saying during our presentation, Sean, wasn't it? So that's a good thing to know that we're on the right track. And I think I guess sort of unpicking that answer, it's around students expecting experience that are tailored, tailored to them. And I guess that's, around, receiving feedback, career advice, maybe even things like the timetabling flexibility. And back to what we were saying around that Netflix experience, it's around they've got that personalized experience every day, haven't they, in the tools that they use, and they want the same from the education providers.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I was gonna say something along the same lines, but I feel like this sort of shift towards personalization and even digital self-service is something that we've seen kind of become more prominent really clearly. Actually, one of the institutions we've been working with is ESIG School of Management. It's a business school over in France, but their teams were battling very much a fragmented tech stack with lots of different systems, different programs. Because of that, and the data being sort of scattered between them all, it really did make the personalization and the agility side of things really quite difficult. So yeah, I can see why that's causing issues. Fortunately for them, that they were able to bring a lot of this under one roof with Full Fabric, which has meant they're able to sort of segment their audiences, personalize much more of their journeys, and give each of those students a more sort of unified but also personalized portal and experience across all their touch points. So yeah, it's interesting to see this split, but it looks like, yeah, we definitely have a clear winner on the demand for personalization, followed by the more needs for digital self-service, I suppose.
Yeah, I remember when I worked in a previous company and they're looking at just IT support. So you get given a device when you join a company and you then have a problem with it and you have to phone the help desk to get support with it and you log a call and someone comes out or takes a while to respond to you. And they moved that whole function to self-service. So you have, documents and self-service articles to help you with that. And they found, the number of support calls went down significantly, but people were, 50% faster in resolving the issues just from that perspective. People like to self-serve and get moving and get going, I think is the point.
Yeah, absolutely.
Brilliant. Okay.
Nice. All right. So I think that leads us on to one of our second poll questions. So wait for it to pop up here. See, oh, there we go. Brilliant. So yeah, be honest with us. How confident are you, I suppose, that your institution is actually meeting these expectations for a modern digital experience from your students? Would you say you're very confident? Your institution's kind of ticking all of the boxes. Are you somewhat confident? Not confident whatsoever? Or completely different. You're actually not sure what your students expect, and therefore it's difficult to say.
Yeah, and my thoughts on this is it's not just about having the digital tools, which some institutions do have. It's whether or not those tools can create this modern, seamless, intuitive experience. So having the tools is one thing, but whether or not they offer the right experience is another thing. So that's what the question is trying to understand, is your confidence level in that. So I guess we'll just wait a few moments for that to go through. Be interesting to see what people do come back with. Certainly the last answer there, we're not sure what students expect. It'd be interesting to see if that comes up as a popular answer. And I guess that's a good time to then start thinking about polling your students, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Need to be running some webinars like this where you're polling everyone who's at them. Um, okay, so the results are in. They're sort of more on the medium to less confident side of things. It looks like 47% said not confident, 37% somewhat confident. And then actually more people said that they weren't sure what their students would expect compared to very confident. But I suppose, yeah, the middle ground answer is sort of where many institutions do sit on this side. Obviously, you've made progress over the last 5 years or so, but there is a bit of a gap. And that gap is obviously kind of what we've been speaking about, but it shows up in the form of a number of different ways. From institutions that I work with, it might be duplicated forms where that student is having to enter the same information time and time and time again. Could be clunky portals that like aren't uploading, on providing them a personalized experience, and then also not to be so focused on the students, but looking at the staff themselves being stretched upon so many different manual processes. I think the friction often comes down to siloed systems on the admission side of things. One for student records, even a third for payments, another for the learning management system. And when students have to re-enter this data time and time again, or chase updates across departments, which should be quite simple, it can become quite frustrating. And this thing does, I also think, diminish trust between the student and the institution over time as well.
But definitely, the silos is definitely one thing that I see here in the UK. So we talk about silos in terms of technology stacks, but there's also silos in terms of people and departments, isn't there? Not communicating well. Definitely see that a lot. It's good. I mean, this poll is interesting. It's kind of what we predicted, the not confident piece, which is, I think it's an honest answer. It's definitely what we're seeing in the UK and what this talk has been about so far. And I guess it kind of points to underinvestment, the legacy systems, and then the disconnect between, internal planning and student reality, I think. So I think it feeds into everything we've been saying so far around staff capacity, finding it hard to transform, all those things. So it's good to see people are being honest, and I guess those are the challenges we're here to help with. Brilliant. Okay, so we'll move to the next question now, question number 3. So we'll just wait for that to pop up. So the question is, what's the biggest challenge holding back digital transformation in your institution or at your institution? So we've got some answers there: legacy systems, lack of budget, limited internal expertise, resistance to change, competing priorities, or other. And you can write the other answers in the chat if you're feeling brave and you want to sort of go off piste and talk about your specific challenges. You can put those in the chat. I guess some of you might find that it's all of those. You might find there's not one answer, but I guess what we're trying to find is the sort of the major blockers. So this question is going to hopefully get to the very heart of why digital transformation can stall, even when that need is clear. I think it's clear that we do need to transform. Robin, thank you very much for your answer there. All of the above. Yeah, we definitely see that. There's even a new one there from Maja. Thank you. Data security issues. Some of the existing platforms are incredibly sticky to move away from, requiring quite a heavy lift to adopt new. It's absolutely true. These legacy systems are really kind of ingrained. So, I mean, I went to a meeting recently and somebody spoke about trying to upgrade and fix an aeroplane whilst it's flying. That's kind of the analogy of these legacy systems. How do you change them when they're in flight? Very, very difficult to do. Brilliant. Right. Okay. So the results are back, and actually, it's a very even split across the board, which says to me that, most people think that all of these issues are a challenge. The major winner there in terms of the answers is lack of budget. So 51% of you stated that lack of budget is a major challenge, and absolutely that's what I'm seeing as one of the major blockers here in the UK. I've got so many customers that I work with that are wanting to change, and they've got projects they want to our help with. There's simply no budget at the moment to help with that, which is a shame. So yeah, transformation, isn't always a cheap thing to do. It requires long-term investment, which is hard when, the short-term pressures kind of dominate. That is a challenge. And I think it does speak to the need for a strong business case. I think that's definitely something Full Fabric and AWS can assist you with when looking at new solutions. But yeah, big challenges there around budgets. There's also Gordon, thank you for your reply there. You said all of those apply, and the main issue is leadership, so that's something you need to tackle yourself. So I'll be interested to get your thoughts, Sean.
Yeah, no, I was going to say, I mean, budget is probably one of the main blockers that I come up against. But I'd say that the real cost isn't just the technology, it's the inefficiencies, the student drop-offs, often the staff burnout that comes with having to be bogged down with a lot of outdated systems. And we talked about this in one of the blogs that we recently released, but schools is actually spending more just maintaining the sprawl of disconnected tools than they would if they were to zoom out, take a step back, and centralize to something a bit more modern that's catered for what they actually need. And often the sort of ROI in one department, like admissions alone, can be quite dramatic enough to sort of change that budgetary conversation. I know, yeah, one of the conversations I was having recently with a college, actually no, one of the business schools at a university in the UK, but they told them they were telling us how their admissions team had become accidental system integrators. The staff themselves were constantly reconciling data between different platforms to make sense of it and make sure that it was clean and working. For them, the blocker wasn't necessarily ambition; it was more the sort of legacy infrastructure and manual handoffs between all of them. And seeing that be the case more and more also when staff leave, or I know in the UK it's becoming more regular with the voluntary redundancies, but it's really shining a light on how much they were holding all of this together. So yeah, no, I do see all of these sort of play a major role into what's holding it back. I think another piece there, just sort of going on the comment that Gordon shared around sort of the leadership, not necessarily having the experience. I think that is where it does sort of come down to multiple teams, multiple departments within the university starting to work together more to analyze where there are gaps, having more of a frank conversation with the digital and tech teams within your university to see kind of where things are and aren't working, and also I suppose being open to having conversations with partners and providers and seeing what other institutions are able to do in this space to support those conversations as you sort of look to kind of go through these new territories for a lot of leadership often. But yeah, is there anything else that you'd add to that, Chris, or should we move on to the?
Just one last thought. I remember having a conversation with a CTO at a university in London very recently, and I said to him, that they've moved a lot of their systems into the cloud. They'd used SaaS providers and they've done some native cloud work. And I said, if you could highlight one benefit for doing that, what would you say? And he thought about it for a while, and then he said to me, everybody in my team, my technical team, has been elevated up the stack. So they're not spending their time, keeping the lights on, changing disks and doing all that kind of non-differentiated heavy lifting, we call it. But they're up adding value back to the organization, writing applications, investing in new technologies, writing code for automation to speed things up. So that was really interesting, I think. So yeah.
Yeah. Nice. All right. I think that brings us on to our next poll, and also, yeah, I suppose just on what we've gone through, because those are sort of a number of different blockers that institutions are facing, whether it's legacy tools, budget, bandwidth. I think another point to note is where you can find momentum to go with that. You don't need to fix everything all at once, but if you can start with what's broken and also very visible to your students, that's often where the sort of digital transformation will have a lot of the biggest and fastest impact on that space. So yeah, we'll wait for, hopefully Marta has access to the polls. Let's see if the next one can come up. Here we go. Brilliant. So yeah, if you could improve one area tomorrow, where would you focus first? Is it more on the admissions and onboarding, student communication, data visibility and reporting, retention strategies, or workflow automation? I think this is a particularly good question because it's no longer about a dream future, but if you were to start, if you had the power to fix something tomorrow, where would that piece be? So yeah, excited to dig into that.
It's just definitely, I mean, what you just said there on the previous question around not doing everything at once is really key, isn't it? And it's about identifying the area where change could create that kind of the biggest ripple effect. So where to get started. So it'd be interesting to see what the results are. Absolutely. And again, if you've got thoughts outside of the standard answers there is an other box. So if you wanted to write that in the chat, it's always great to get the real-time feedback and thoughts from people on the call in the chat there.
Absolutely. I also noticed the Q&A function has been buzzing as well. So we're not ignoring you. We'll get to those, but I think towards the end of the presentation, we'll run through some of the Q&As if they've popped up as well. Nice. Okay. So we've got a bit more of a spread here as well. Across the board, it looks like workflow automation was the most popular one. 35%, sorry, picked workflow automations. And then after that, we've got data visibility, admissions and onboarding, and then it goes down to retention and student communication. I think part of this might also just be down to the sort of specific departments that people are working in. But yeah, no, it is really interesting to see that. I suppose the workflow automation start to come up. I know sort of one of the silent killers for, say, enrollment students today. They don't want to be sort of waiting 3 weeks for an offer or a status update, even if, say, it's a document that needs to be uploaded in order for them to complete their application or to move to the next stage. You also don't really want a member of staff having to be the person to pick that out and chase it up. If they're not getting these fast responses, they can often be sort of moving to other institutions that are able to have this automation built in. So fixing this means automating those handoffs, building really clever workflows where sort of no one's waiting for an email to go on to the next step. Fortunately, that is actually something that Full Fabric really does specialize in on the automation piece. One, from the student's perspective, because they have a dedicated, dynamic, personalized portal to guide them through each stage, but it also doesn't rely on a staff member to identify students in the wrong place, or we're lacking this information, or how do we guide them through to the next spot. It's all done automatically through the system itself. But yeah, interesting to see how that one's come up. What's your thoughts on this part, Chris? Is there any one in particular that you'd pick out as well?
Yeah, I mean, the workflow automation one is interesting for me because, like, back to that example of the CTO I spoke to in London about what was the one benefit that he saw with his team. And he said everybody's elevated up the stack and they're starting to automate processes on the cloud platform and get benefits from that. And it, it sort of frees people up, cuts time. It can remove human error and ultimately improve services because there's no human error involved. Interestingly, I had a conversation with an analytics head of analytics at a university in the UK, And they were talking about automation and repetitive tasks, and they were talking about the amount of assessments they have to mark across the various different courses that they offer. And I made a note of it. They said that they have 527,000 assessments to mark each year, and they sort of outsource that, and it's £34 an hour to mark all of those assessments. So it's essentially millions and millions of pounds to mark those assessments. So they asked me, is there a way that they could automate that? And we were looking at, AI, artificial intelligence, to transform some of that as a concept, as an idea. And whenever I talk to my customers about the cloud, certainly AWS, to get started, you log on to a console and it's very much point and click. I want a virtual machine, or I want some storage, and it's quite a manual way of doing things, which is fine. But I try and encourage people very quickly to move on to infrastructure as code, to automate those processes, because it's quicker, it's more reliable, and it's also easier to then transfer that work over to other people because it's kind of readable and documented. So yeah, so it's really interesting around the answer there around automation being the most popular. I think it fits nicely into the I guess the narrative around full fabric and also AWS.
Absolutely. And I think we need to congratulate both of ourselves now for getting to the 41-minute mark, and only at that point you mentioning the word AI. I think it's got to be the first tech digital transformation focused webinar, or any talk I've been to lately without too much AI talk. Um, I should note that we are working with AI to help primarily admissions teams, but yeah, I'm glad to not be banging on about it too much from a webinar like this today.
That's good.
Nice. All right. So, with that said, I'm
Should we
gonna
do the should we do the Q&A quickly? There's just a couple of questions in there.
yes, yeah,
So
let's
the
do so.
question, which is, do you feel students now prefer online learning to on campus, or is that changing? Oh, it's a difficult question to answer. I think what we're finding is they want both. They want the experience, as we said, to be the same in both, and have the choice. So I guess if from my perspective, if I was going to university now, I would like to know that yes, I'd like to be able to go in sometimes and live it and breathe it and be with my peers and have that interactive experience with my tutor, but also have the convenience of being able to log on to that session remotely if it suited me. And that's the same for my work. That's how I work. I sometimes work from home. I sometimes go into the office. So I'm not sure what your thoughts are on that, Sean.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think it depends on the age group, and I suppose the content, the course that those students are doing. Obviously, with undergraduates, it is that they are looking for more of that sort of in-person um, community feel as much as possible. But for the more professional learners, it needs to be on their own time, and often it is sort of easier for them to be able to do that online. As well as that, we're also seeing um, institutions themselves are preferring to find more ways to deliver their content online, because it's better for margins as well, and you're able to recruit more students if putting them through that way as well. So it's a bit of a mix, but I think for the student side of things, it's dependent on sort of the age range, and the courses that you're offering. But then obviously there's a lot of advantages for the university to be able to zoom in and focus on how do they do a specific course online to be able to cater for maybe a group of students in another location that they wouldn't have otherwise been able to cater for.
Cool. And then the second question was, it says absolutely true that our IT keeps investing in large scale projects, but those technologies are actually making our team's life harder, not easier. What is your experience with failed implementations? And I think, yeah, that's a good one. I've seen many a IT project fail in my time. I've worked in IT for a long time. I think, there's an ethos at AWS, certainly with regards to cloud computing, is that you can implement quickly on the cloud, but you can fail fast. That's the idea. So you implement and fail fast and learn from your mistakes. So I think you do learn more from your failures, but obviously in terms of these projects that are being, I guess, dictated to you that fail, that's a very, very difficult challenge to overcome. I think it's important to fail fast and learn and move forwards. But it'd be interesting to get your thoughts, Sean.
Yeah, no, I think another part is with these projects. I'm always I can't believe it how many times I'll be halfway through conversations with an institution, say one specific department within it, and they've highlighted all of these problems that they're facing, but then as soon as they go to their main IT department, say, okay, we found these problems we're having, we found the solution that would like to go into in more detail with you. IT have said, well, we've already got a project underway and we're going to be fixing these problems, but they weren't part of the conversation to begin with. And before you know it, this whole new uh, tool or solution's been put in place, which actually hasn't kind of taken into account the needs of the individuals and even the students who will be using that. So yeah, I think it's also a case of making sure that you do open up that conversation to as many people be kind of affected by those projects when they're implemented as well. And I think when that's done properly, that's when you see sort of most success from the projects. I can see that especially from the point of view of my side and with Full Fabric especially.
Brilliant. Just conscious of time. So there's just one last question in there, which is a good one for you, Sean and Marta. What would you say is the best thing about full fabric and how does it differ from other solutions?
Thanks. Yeah, putting us on the spot here, but no, absolutely love it. So yeah, I mean, Full Fabric is purpose built specifically for higher education. I know a lot of other solutions out there are, yeah, built for other industries and sort of being shoehorned into higher education, sort of marketing, recruitment, admissions, and operations. So it really does sort of stand out in that it's been built over the last 14 years with higher education institutions specifically for the needs that they have. As well as that, it's very much a sort of it can be off the shelf solution, so it doesn't require a huge amount from your IT or development teams in order to support on implementing it and building it. And when you do need or make if you do need changes to any part of it, you have the power to be able to do that yourself. Doesn't require getting on the back of a big IT development list centrally in order to get the updates and changes that you need. So those are just a couple of high level ones, but I suppose if you're interested in finding out more, be more than happy to set some time with anyone individually to take them through that.
Sounds good, Sean. Great answer. Sign me up. So yeah, so where are we moving to next?
Brilliant. All right, so yeah, we'll quickly wrap up because we have a couple of final slides just to finish this up. If I quickly find the share button once more. Here we go. You can see that all right. So yeah, I think after everything we've heard in the polls, it is worth asking sort of what does good actually look like. I think the institutions that are getting this right, they're not necessarily perfect, but what they have done, they've nailed two key ingredients really well. So the first one, which I'll take because it's a bit closer to my experience and expertise, but is focused around student first experiences. So it means creating seamless journeys, making sure it's from inquiry through to graduation and even beyond. It's not just providing a slick landing page, but something consistent, intuitive at every touch point. It also means providing these personalized communications. I know it's come up a few times already, but not just dropping a first name in an email and expecting that to kind of tick the box. It needs to be sending the right message to the right person at the right moment as well. It also means true self-service, so ensuring that you're giving students the access and control that they expect wherever they are, whenever they need it. Because students don't want to have to email 4 or 5 different people from different departments in order to get an answer. They want to be able to log in, check, and move on. And then I think finally it's about removing friction. So making sure there's fewer logins, fewer dead ends, fewer delays, whether they're applying from, say, India or Canada on mobile or on desktop, no matter what time zone they're in, the journey should just work. And the institutions that are doing this well, they've built all of this with the students in mind every step of the way, and they're not letting their journeys get stale. We'll hand over to Chris to go through the second part because none of this is possible with I suppose the engine underneath it all.
Yeah, so at AWS we have something called the well-architected framework. So when we're looking at building solutions, there are 6 pillars to that. So for example, there is security is one of those pillars, but also one of those pillars is operational excellence. And when Full Fabric obviously runs on AWS, they'll have access to the solutions architecture team who perform these well-architected reviews with Full Fabric, and we do that with our customers directly as well. And it sort of focuses on these subjects really, which you can read. So automation, which we've discussed already. So repetitive tasks are automated to save you time and reduce human error and admin. So that's only a good thing. Back to the CTO in London elevating their team to more interesting tasks, focusing on adding value back to the business. So moving away from pointing and clicking and changing disks and those types of things. Definitely connected systems is a part of operational excellence. So working with open standards, making sure that disparate systems can talk to each other via an API or certain standards. And also not just the systems being connected, but also the departments as well. So breaking down those silos across departments is something we try to help with. Obviously, the student data is key, and having a single source of the truth. So looking to maybe move your data into something like a data lake, having a single source of truth and getting that wisdom from the data which we spoke about earlier. Maybe you're looking at, are students disengaging from their course, and could you intervene and intercept early to retain that student before they drop out? And then in terms of the cloud, in terms of sort of fundamentals, it's definitely around scalability and being modular. So, and then sort of paying for what you use. So like I said before, infrastructure that can scale horizontally to cope with demand. So historically in IT, you'll buy a solution and you'll size it for peak capacity, which means 70% of the time it's hardly being used, but it's just kind of waiting for those months in September to be fired up, which is massively inefficient and expensive. But you can, just scale up quickly with AWS. And back to that point around, testing things out and failing fast. You can certainly do that with the cloud. You haven't got to go and provision and buy expensive hardware components to try out a project. You can just simply spin up some software on AWS or in the cloud. And then in terms of cloud first, if you talk to everybody or anybody at Amazon, they'll say to you that security is job zero. That's the top of mind always. So if we ever release a service, it's been designed with security in mind as a starting point, so we work backwards from there. So security is everybody's responsibility in an organization. And we offer, world-leading technologies to help you secure your workloads in the cloud, and we'll share the responsibility with you and secure everything on the cloud. So yeah, that's my thoughts.
Nice. Thanks, Chris. I think, that pairing really does say it all. You really do need to ensure that the experienced students feel is really outstanding, but also the infrastructure that makes it all possible behind it all. Nice. So yeah, wary of time. So we'll start to kind of wrap this up. But wouldn't be able to end the webinar without at least walking through one quick case study from one of our partners recently with London Film School. So just to, I think, also talk on what it actually looks like in action. Just some context on them. So they're London Film School, a relatively small but very globally focused institution. They're also handling a very high volume of complex applications as videos and portfolios and projects as part of the application process and the review process. And they're also working with a particularly lean team. Before they worked with us, I think they said it was 7 different tools that they were using just to manage the pre-enrollment journey from point of inquiry through to application evaluation and enrollment. With that, it was really difficult to get much funnel visibility. It required a ton of manual work, and staff were spending more time chasing and jumping between spreadsheets than actually supporting the students, which was kind of what they were there to do and what they wanted to be doing. What they did was implement Full Fabric. I think it took about 90 days or so. But with that, they're able to manage the entire student journey from inquiry to enrollment all in the one place. And recently they've decided to launch with one of our newer systems also for it to be their main student information system once the students are there as well. What that's meant for them is it's meant that the teams can reclaim a lot of their time, streamline and automate their workflows, and also provide a lot more clarity at every stage of the funnel. And I think it's been a really good example of how you don't necessarily need a huge team or a huge budget to make real progress. You just need to make sure that the team that you do have, they're all on board, they've got the right focus, and at the end of the day, end up with the right platform. So yeah, one quick sort of run through of this, and more than happy to share the link of the full case study for anyone who's interested. What I'll do, I don't think there's any further questions. So just to wrap things up, yeah, if there is anything that we've said today that really resonated and you'd like to explore further as to kind of what this could look like at your institution, would be more than happy to chat. From our side, we're offering sort of a free strategy session to help map out your current processes, identify bottlenecks, explore what a sort of more modern approach, and also talk through with you how to get leadership on board if that's something that you've been struggling with in the past. We'll hand it over to Chris if there's any final words from your side for inviting Marta back.
I'd just like to say thank you for the opportunity to come and speak with you, and thank you to the Full Fabric team for having me along. It was great to have the polls. I think that was a really nice way to spark some ideas and some thoughts, and thank you to the audience for their participation and answers on that. I think it's reassuring that the answers were sort of in line with what we're thinking. Yeah, sort of. I think you've got an opportunity to work with Sean and the team with those free offerings there. I definitely think that's worth doing. And obviously, if you're interested in speaking with AWS, you know who I am. Get in touch. I'll be happy to chat to you and talk to you about the benefits of cloud computing.
Thank you so much, Sean and Chris, for the thoughtful conversation, and thanks to everyone who joined and participated with us today. Really interesting to see where everyone's at their transformation journey. We'd really appreciate if you could take 30 seconds to complete our short survey. Your feedback really helps us improve and shape future webinars. Thanks again for being part of today's session, and we hope to connect again soon. Have a great rest of your day.